Hello and welcome to Hustle to Flow, State of the Builder. And today we're talking about a founder or an environmental pressure that is when cycles are faster, but it's harder to interpret the signals. And so let's go ahead and dig into this topic. So in this example, and what we're looking at in the environment is how we can have a full calendar of appointments, and we can have people who commit to create for us a full calendar of appointments. However, everything isn't necessarily as it seems. And as you get more volume, then you lose the ability to interpret what that really means. And so, even though meetings are booked and the dashboard is green, and there's a question of whether they're real opportunities or just good reasons to meet, right? So, let's take a little deeper look. So, what can we see and what can we not yet tell? So, what we can see is we can see there's more outreach happening. We can see that there are more bookings. We can see that there are more meetings. But what we can't yet tell in this scenario when there's more volume is we can't tell if there's a real fit. We can't tell if there's something worth pursuing from a commercial perspective. And we are not sure if we have a qualified pipeline increase in this scenario. So what that means is that activity can be visible, but the meaning of what that activity represents may not be visible. And as things move faster, as volume increases, then that ability to determine which is which gets more difficult. That's the environmental pressure when things move fast, but yet I'm not quite sure that it means what I think it means. Okay. Now, the natural read is, well, the calendar's filling up, so pipeline is increasing. Outbound must be working. That's a reasonable conclusion. But the question is whether or not it's really answering the right question, right? So what is the question? So, and we'll get to that. We will get to the question. So when activity is moving faster, say, for example, I know you probably get all the time these invitations from people who are going to book you 20 appointments or 30 appointments and qualified appointments for your business. All the time we get these messages, right? But the question is, what does that additional volume, what do those additional bookings really represent, right? So even though we can get more appointments, we can get more bookings. As we get more, then we need to continue to understand what the value of those appointments are. And as things move faster, our ability to understand that diminishes. Why? Because initially, as the founder was involved from the very beginning, the qualifying of the appointments, the scheduling of the appointments. And so the context was always there. Once you begin to have more appointments and have more people helping you with that, then as that activity moves up, the ability to interpret what that actually represents when that booking is on the calendar diminishes. Okay. So speed increases, but clarity does not. So when we look at this particular problem of increasing speed but less interpretability, there are several patterns that reveal themselves. Okay. So there's more than one possible explanation for a full calendar. It could be the volume is increased, but there's a cost I pay on quality, or the qualification may be missing, or I lost context because I've got someone outside working with scheduling the appointments. And so these things all affect the quality of how I interpret what I'm seeing. And it's one result, but it's multiple possible explanations. And not all of them are really helping you interpret what pipeline really is, right? Okay. So this week's possibility we're looking at is calendar to pipeline misclassification. And that is, you have a meeting, you have bookings, you have a full calendar, and even though you have those bookings, they probably don't really represent pipeline, but they're treated as pipeline, right? And again, this is one possible explanation of a pattern of behavior that could be represented by your calendar being booked and not representing what you thought it did. This is just one, but this is the one that we're looking at today to kind of frame this pressure of more speed, less clarity. Okay. So, and the issue here is that the distinction is lost. Everyone will look at a calendar and agree that, oh, it's a full calendar. Oh, I've got, 100 bookings. And it looks like that's amazing until you get on the other end of those appointments and you find out maybe that there's not something qualified. So the issue happens in the handoff between the demand and the conversion. So that is, the outreach is the meeting. The meeting is scheduled, it's booked on your appointment, but is it a real opportunity, or is it just a great conversation to have? When you're looking at your pipeline, the answer to that question makes a huge difference on how you look at the business and the decisions that you make. Okay. And we evaluate that with numbers and proof, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. Now, the distinction that matters. Booked means it's worth a conversation. Tons of people I love to talk to, tons of conversations I would love to have. Okay. But when I'm looking at opportunity and pipeline, like what is worth pursuing and what is not worth pursuing, it's not the same thing, particularly when you're working to grow your business. It's not the same. So that leaves an open question. And we deliberately leave the question open in Profit Visibility Lab. In Hustle to Flow. In Hustle to Flow, we deliberately leave the question open, because the purpose here is at a high level just to raise an awareness that this is a pressure, to put some language around it, to articulate why it could be a concern. Maybe it is for you, maybe it's not. And then the question we investigate in the Profit Visibility Lab, which I'll cover in just a second. So the question is, when outbound increases and you have more meetings, how does the founder know if it's real pipeline that I can use to plan with and focus on and make decisions, or is it just more activity? Okay. That is the question that we're going to leave open today. Now, I mentioned the lab. What we're going to examine, we have a companion series. I should do a better intro, right? So in the archetypes of scale theme that we are in, we have Hustle to Flow, which is our high level orientation to the environment, pressure, and the founder problem. And then we take that pattern that we decide to spotlight, which in this case is the calendar, bookings to calendar misclassification, calendar to pipeline misclassification. Oh, okay. Calendar to pipeline misclassification. And then we do a deep dive investigation to prove or to show what happens when we as founders don't distinguish between booked meetings and qualified opportunities, and how the way that is interpreted flows through the business and impacts how you make decisions based on how you define your pipeline. So that's what we're looking at on Tuesday in Profit Visibility Lab. We're going to examine the impact on the outbound spend, the pipeline interpretation, and most importantly, the founder's time. Okay. So that's Profit Visibility Lab. And what we're looking at here is how speed does not create clarity. And in fact, speed causes it to be more difficult for us to interpret what's really happening in the business. A meeting is not proof of opportunity. And so we're going to prove that in the Profit Visibility Lab with a case. We do model cases to keep the focus on the flow of how it actually plays out. And so the 15K Mirage is the topic that we're going to cover on Tuesday at 6:30 in the Profit Visibility Lab. So with that, I encourage you to see more, guess less, and always diagnose before you deploy. Until next time.